I know.
Yay! Woo! Voices. Scary. Hooray! Right, welcome everybody to the penultimate session before you get your beers and your fries. So, hello everybody. My name's Martijn Verburg, and this is
Richard.
And today we're going to give just a little bit of a tour, I guess, through kind of the technology stack we picked for one of our products, why we picked it, some of the fun things we discovered along the way, like how much we love MongoDB. No one is here from Tenjin, are they? No? Good. And at the end of it, we're sort of going to discuss how you yourself perhaps can take a similar journey yourself. So without further ado, we'll kick into it. And this is a great quote that Richard found. Richard's actually a bit of a movie buff, so if you're into your movies, you should definitely have a chat to him. He's got an encyclopedic knowledge. It's quite scary. If you ever give up your day job, Richard, I think you could be a movie critic. So this is the feeling I had. I came very much from a strong Java EE background. I spent a lot of time working in enterprises, building request-response applications, maybe branching out to something like a complex JMS application. Real proper big enterprisey stuff. Then we had the startup, and all of a sudden we were talking about having to have a cloud SaaS service, and the technology choices and things we had to make just really didn't fit into that world. We'll go into that shortly, but this was the sort of lost feeling I had starting out as a CTO for a small startup. Quite scary stuff. So who are we? We both work for jClarity. I have now been demoted to the role of CEO, which means they've now taken away my commit rights as of about this afternoon.
I wish we'd taken away the commit rights. Yeah, and I'm a software engineer. I build product.
Yeah. So that's what we do. So this is roughly what we're going to cover. We're going to talk a little bit about the status quo of where people are today with Java EE and things. Quickly explain to you what it is we built and what it is we're building. We promise there won't be too much product pitch in there. It purely is all about the underlying technology. We'll quickly cover how we pick the technology. Then we're going to go through the fun scorecard, which is basically trolling everything, which is really going to be really fun. Are there any AngularJS people in the room? Yeah, any Vert.x users, or is Tim Fox here? Okay.
Some? Cool.
Good, that's good. We may get run out of the room with pitchforks and burning torches, but that's okay.
We can always hope.
And then at the end, we'll hopefully talk to you a little bit about how you can go about doing this yourself. Richard's going to cover most of the tech in this talk because I think my last commit was a single character change to a shell script.
Yeah.
And I probably got that wrong. So
yep.
Anyway, the status quo. So here is this wonderful diagram that any of you who are a Java EE certified architect, capital A on the architect, will know very well. So we've got wonderful technologies here like we've got some Corba, we've got some applets here, JSPs, those are really cool. Who here likes JSPs? No hands up. Still not. And all sorts of other fun, fun enterprisey things. We have transaction and security and, oh, goodness knows what else. Right. So that's, the world that a lot of Java developers live in today. And we have a lot of experience in this at jClarity. I am actually, scarily enough,
the backup rep for the LJC on the JCP EC.
So we deal a lot with Java standards. Richard, for a long time, also sat on our little JCP committee that we have. So we dive deeply into the Java standards of today, and we help vote on them and try and give feedback to the expert groups and things. So we have a lot of familiarity with this space. Don't ever become a certified architect, by the way. Bad idea. Take it off the CV. But then the issue is, as we discovered when we first started looking at our technology choices, is, well, what if we can't use that familiar world anymore? Oh dear. Yes, 2 years running, they've switched off. Oh, it's back. Where's Dan Hardiker? He did it to me last year, the bastard. Right. Excuse my language again. Right, so that's currently the state of the world. So a lot of you are in this familiar world. Java EE, you're using WebLogic, WebSphere, something like that. Hopefully not too many JSPs because they suck. So what is it we're building? Well,
try and deliver the answer to people's performance problems. Trying to just automatically do root cause analysis.
So we'll show you an architecture diagram in a second, but basically Richard and John back in our London office have spent an awful lot of time training some machine learning algorithms to learn about the behavior of operating systems, the JVM, and hardware. So that when you have a performance problem, you'll be told exactly what it is, as opposed to just some metrics or some pretty lines on a graph. So it's really good fun deep dive tech, quite a lot of computer science in there as well. But the key thing for us was that because our little daemons or our little agents are sitting on your machines, they had to be really lightweight and low impact, because the one thing we don't want to do is screw the customer. Screwing the customer is generally a bad idea and leads to your business dying. So here's a nice massive set of technology stack of what we have. So let me see. So we've got these lightweight daemons that I just talked about here. Right, so these are little tiny Java applications that have a tiny, tiny footprint. We're using some technologies in the middle that we host ourselves. We use Vert.x. Tim Fox in the room? Yeah, there he is. Go talk to Tim over there if you want to learn more about Vert.x at the end of this talk. It's really cool. And we use a variety of languages, some Groovy, some Java. We use MongoDB because we're web scale. And we use some fancy JavaScript HTML5 stuff at the top there, AngularJS, so on and so forth. So at this point, I'll probably hand the click over to Richard, and he will take you through most of the tech, and I will interject where I can.
Yeah, so when we're talking about the daemon, it tries to locally diagnose performance problems on an individual machine. So when we're talking about being low impact, we really want to like happily run in a 16 meg heap, that kind of size of memory consumption. And we kind of basically want to do nearly nothing all the time. Those are not really properties which you naturally associate with like a Java EE container. And even if we move to our server-side component, like our aggregator, we want to be able to monitor a lot of machines, happily, talk to them, but most of the time they aren't doing anything, but we still want to maintain socket connections, we still want to talk to them. So naturally, non-blocking I/O is the kind of an obvious architectural choice. HTTP does have some niceties, happily works with corporate firewalling, loads of that kind of thing. But we generally prefer using socket-based connections, and we also want to have some kind of high availability, fault tolerance type system, so things don't break, customers don't get unhappy.
Yeah, we want to be Cloud Pro, 24/7. That's the one.
Yes, yeah. And on our UI side of things, we want to happily run in the browser, because we don't want people to install stuff, but we don't want people to have some kind of crappy 1996 style awful web page. We want something to be rich and happy and that kind of thing. And also, because we're a monitoring system, loads of our information from the browser doesn't really fit a request-response model. Loads of it's like kind of just push the information into the browser. So that's another kind of architectural difference that we have. Yeah. So it doesn't really fit the Java EE world, as we say. Java EE is not low impact. No one's ever going to say that. Architecturally, very much request response. And, there's obviously been a big push for things like WebSocket support in EE7, but it's still not exactly a kind of messaging-oriented system.
Exactly. And especially, for example, on the daemon side, I mean, we could have, in theory, used WebSockets on both sides. But if we were using the official Java EE7 specification for WebSockets, we'd have to have some sort of web server running on people's servers. I'm not going to go and ask a client to go and install Wildfly or Glassfish just so I have some WebSocket capability, right? I think this is in part the popularity of why Node.js is taking off. It's just a really small, simple, lightweight way to do this type of messaging, which Java doesn't really have.
So having said that we're not going to go down the Java EE route, what technology are we going to pick? And why did we pick it is an obvious question to ask.
Anything that's good for our CV.
No. So the point is you want to have a methodology, and you don't want that as your methodology. You also don't want this kind of random, throw it into a mixing bowl, do what the hell you want with technology, because otherwise you end up with a moose in your kitchen.
Yeah, I was going, what the hell is a moose doing in that picture?
What? So we're looking at pictures, and we're talking to one of our co-workers, John, and John was like, he's a Swedish chef, They have mooses in Sweden. It's like, in their kitchen? Really?
No, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe Matthias Carlson can tell us about that.
Yeah.
Chocolate mousse.
Chocolate mousse.
Very good.
Yeah. But more importantly, you do want to have some kind of concrete methodology when picking your tech. So we've conveniently stolen Matt Rabel's methodology because we think it's quite good.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a pro speaker tip. If you ever get asked to speak at a conference, shamelessly steal from your fellow speakers. Praise them afterwards. Don't ask for permission. Just praise them afterwards. It'll be okay.
So the way the methodology itself works is you pick a ranking criteria. So a bunch of things which you want to, properties which you want your technology to exhibit. You weight each criteria, so you say how important it is to you. You score the solution, so that means you say how good you think the solution is according to that criteria. Multiply the two, add everything up. Probably some nice streams code for that in one of the earlier talks, actually.
Yeah.
And once you've picked the top 2 solutions using that, you prototype them to see if you were really talking sensibly or if it was BS all along.
Yeah. And even that sometimes doesn't rescue, but we'll get into that later.
So here's like a more real-world example from our messy office. And you can kind of see along the side there all the different ranking criteria. And the red numbers on the left are like the weightings we associated to things, and then along the right-hand side, there's scorings we associated. So we're actually picking UI technologies. We ended up going down to 3, I think, because we also blackballed a bunch of, that's what the scribbles are on the top left-hand corner.
That top right-hand corner there's a lot of really fun technologies up there that we killed straight away. Flash, yeah, not a good idea.
SWT.
SWT, also not a good idea for what we wanted to do. And,
yeah, a lot of blackball technologies. So having used this methodology, there's a few observations about it. So the first thing is, it is still a subjective methodology. It's not scientific. Those numbers don't correspond to any absolute truth out there. And there's no guarantees you're going to pick the right thing. MongoDB. But it does have some quite good pros when picking technology. You can easily get everyone in your team involved, and even if they're kind of slightly quiet or slightly shy, but maybe have something good to say. It also avoids you kind of having these kind of long, drawn-out discussions where people bike shed over small details, because at the end of the day, everyone has to get their ranking in and come down to a number. Yeah. And it also avoids you having your architectural level technology dictator who tells everyone he knows best.
Which a lot of enterprise shops have. Yeah. Enterprise architects, they're my favorite pet hate. They spend their time writing Word documents and Visio diagrams and, yeah, don't actually do any coding. Sad times all around.
So, having said how we picked tech, let's talk a little bit about what kind of technology we actually picked. That's kind of the tech stack in a very messy logo-ridden slide that's got a bunch of different bits and bobs on. Quick hands up in the audience. Yeah, anyone who is using Vert.x in production at the moment? A few people.
You will be after this talk because it's awesome.
What about AngularJS?
You should keep using
it
because it's awesome.
Cool. What about MongoDB? Some people. Chef. Yep, cool. And what about Groovy? Ooh, by far the most popular.
Can I just compare? Because I have the Chef and Puppet guys fighting about this the whole time. So Chef people, put up your hands again. Okay, it's about 30. And now Puppet people. Still even.
I'd say, okay.
The VCs won't be happy.
Yeah, so if we get back to how this fits into our overall architecture, our kind of daemon-side application that we deploy onto people's servers is basically just a plain core Java app with none of that fanciness in. On the server side, we use Vert.x heavily for our kind of aggregation and bringing results together side of things. And a bit of Groovy and a bit of Java on that side of things. And we also use MongoDB for storing information and that kind of thing. We then WebSocket through to clients, and all our UI is just kind of AngularJS, rich client, single-page app type thing.
Yeah, which is still dictated by our graphic designer / UX expert because we kind of suck at making UIs.
And she's your wife.
And she's my wife. Number one rule, always listen to your UX person, especially if she's your wife.
So,
Right.
Angular. There's actually quite a lot of talks at Devox about Angular, so I won't go into much details. Basically, client-side JavaScript framework, model view, whatever the hell you want to do. So you can do MVC. There's also a kind of interesting argument that their scope objects constitute view models, which I'll leave entirely, but kind of you can use it a little bit how you want. It's got this really nice two-way data binding. So a lot of templating languages have a thing where you can take some data and just plop that value into your template. Angular also has the kind of thing where you can get input off forms, bind that back into values, and it goes both ways. We've also quite heavily used directives, which are kind of a way of building little components that you can fit in. So they're like your kind of gateway out of the very, very declarative style of templating that Angular has into some messy imperative DOM manipulation browser world or legacy jQuery plugins. Yeah. Angular's been, really, really good in a lot of ways. So I think one of the things that's really nice about it is the whole HTML5 stuff coming along down the line. But there's not necessarily browser support for that yet. But having your ability to build your own kind of extend HTML in that respect is really good. And the declarative templates, again, really easy to understand, really nice, really good if you want to have a rich client-side app, that kind of thing. Code structure. I mean, we've actually been pretty much following MVC in terms of our client-side code. It's something people are familiar with, especially coming from a Java background, something people are very happy with, similar to the DI in there as well. And yeah, client-side templating is a real win if you end up with lots and lots of JavaScript type code.
Yeah, so two things for me especially, as someone who was only part-time coding on our technology stack, Angular was a huge win for me because the simple code structure meant that I could come in and fix UI bugs quickly. I knew nothing about Angular, but it just made sense. I'll just try something in the editor, deploy it, and it'll be just, oh, that kind of worked. The other thing I absolutely love about it is the true separation of concerns in terms of the templating. I no longer have to do JSF, JSP, GWT, any of these server-side awful templating solutions. I can properly template on the client side. And that automatically made us think really carefully about the API we had between the client and our aggregator beforehand. So we had it really allowed us to separate concerns right from the get-go, which means we had a much cleaner API as well. So it's been fantastic, I think.
Yeah. On the negatives, the AngularJS had this unfortunate choice of name for their first testing framework, which was Testacular, which I don't need to go into much detail, so I'm sure you can imagine what the Google search results end up with. They replaced it with Karma, which is a much, much better name, but is still not a great end-to-end testing framework. It's not bad from a JavaScript point of view, but the issue that we had was getting a load of existing Java code, a lot of interaction with that kind of thing, happily working with Karma on the client side.
Sort of the single build and deploy pipeline we try and achieve at jClarity was very difficult because we'd have all this great Java stuff which we kind of hacked around Maven to get to work, and we got that going quite well, and then we sort of hit this massive JavaScript barrier at the other side. So we're still kind of working our way through that, actually.
And we kind of backed off and moved back to Selenium, which is a more traditional technology which works.
Yeah.
The other thing is, so under the hood, when you do all these template evaluations, the kind of top-level method that gets called to say, go evaluate all this template stuff in this scope, is scope.apply, which for most people who are using Angular is entirely hidden from view because their existing kind of framework has, for example, an HTTP service, so you get some data from a RESTful service. It calls apply under the hood. It's all magic, all looks great. Unfortunately, when you're kind of more messaging-driven, more server-side push, and you integrate that way, and there isn't quite so much support for that kind of thing, you end up having to call this yourself. And you can run into kind of difficulties, because it's not really what you're meant to do, but it ends up being an ugly necessity sometimes.
Definitely. On the bottom point, it's actually gotten a lot better. Google recently released a really great AngularJS plugin for Google Chrome. You kind of forced to use Chrome in that case, but between that and Chrome's natural JavaScript debugger and things, it's been actually not too terrible to debug problems. which surprised me, because when I'd first tried to do front-side, client-side JavaScript debugging and fixing issues, it was just a disgusting nightmare, especially when you're using Internet Explorer. Yuck.
Yeah. Yes, Internet Explorer. The other thing that's a bit of a negative is, even though the kind of declarative approach is really, really nice, people are kind of familiar with jQuery. It's got a lot more Stack Overflow answers. It's got a lot more kind of documentation and help and familiarity and plugins and all those kind of things that you expect from being a more mature technology. So it can sometimes be a bit of a pain to kind of plug in as well through the into Angular. But yeah.
Scores on the board?
We gave it an 8 out of 10, or 4 gold stars. You've got to get gold on the slide somewhere. So I guess the thing is, if you're looking at doing a kind of rich client UI single-page app, Angular's a real win for this kind of stuff, especially compared with hand-rolled JavaScript.
Definitely. So one of the other slightly tricky things you'll find is that you want to start combining it with other popular JavaScript libraries such as Twitter Bootstrap. We use sock.js as well to do our WebSocket communication. And you end up having this sort of plethora of mini JavaScript frameworks. So you do want to start being careful about using things and use things like require.js to actually start managing your JavaScript dependencies, which, if you come from a Maven background, you should be totally familiar and happy with, so it's all just fine. Just works out of the box.
Yeah. So, MongoDB.
After an 8 out of 10, what do people think we're going to give Mongo? Should we go 8 out of 10? Who thinks we're going to give Mongo 8? 7? 6? 5? Ooh, yeah. 4? Ooh, dear, oh dear. I think the audience might have already been warned.
Okay. So yeah, Mongo's a NoSQL document store. It's scalable in the sense that it supports sharding, so splitting data up into different shards, and then you can deal with each of those individually, so you don't get your write rates limited by an individual machine. It's fault tolerant in the sense that you can replicate data on different machines, so if someone chainsaws through one of your servers,
and yeah,
it can happen. There could be a chainsaw.
Come see us afterwards. There is a story about this.
Yeah. And obviously, it is the new database sexy. It's got a lot of traction.
And they've got lots of really good marketing and salespeople.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of more architecturally, the way kind of perhaps I'd say a typical Mongo deployment ends up looking is you've got a bunch of different shards, each of which has got a replica set. So there's replicated data within that shard, and the replica set splits it up so you don't have, as I say, single write limitations. Mongo S's are the things that tell you where to go look up the data and whatnot.
Yeah, like controls.
So positives. I mean, document modeling is actually really, really nice. It's better than Orm Hell. The API is really nice. Like, getting started is great. It's basically like crack. It's really easy to get started, and then down the line, you have issues.
Mongo is a gateway drug. It's a gateway drug, yeah.
And the replication sharding does work, and it is pretty easy. And for certain use cases, it can be fast. I mean, each of the NoSQL stores has we're really great at this particular thing, which I wouldn't say that Mongo particularly has any particular thing it claims to be really great at, which is totally fair play. Most people don't need we're really great at that individual thing that a lot of NoSQL solutions have. But yeah, it's not the end of the world.
And it goes without saying that because you're going with a NoSQL solution, for us, because we didn't really understand initially up front what data we were storing, which we won't know until our customer base itself matures. Any sort of, I won't say any sort of NoSQL solution, but certainly a document models type of NoSQL solution for us is brilliant, because we could just literally dump stuff into a data store and worry about formalizing the structure around it later. So happy days.
On the negatives, so I think the biggest thing that we kind of spent time dealing with, or annoyance dealing with, was security. So if you want to have different machines, you obviously want to have some kind of not sending raw BSON messages over the internet that everyone can read. It's a good security start. So you might want to use some kind of like SSL connection to talk between the different Mongo instances running on different machines. Unfortunately, even though MongoDB has support for SSL, the servers don't come with that compiled in to the binaries for the free edition you get. You have to pay 10 Gen or MongoDB Limited or name of the week to get a version with SSL support. Or
well played, I think. Well played.
Or, yeah, it's not a terrible idea in some respects. Or you compile your own version, and then you get into the horrific issues with compiling your own version. So, you'd kind of think that if you compiled a MongoDB instance and said, you ran the thing to say, hey, give me a deb file, you know, classic installation on Debian Ubuntu servers, that what it would do is take the MongoDB instance that you've compiled and put it into the deb file. That's like a reasonable thing to expect.
That's what we expected.
And not that it compiles your own MongoDB, then goes and downloads one from their website, and then puts that into the deb file.
As I said, well played, MongoDB. Well played.
And then you find out that there's like one guy in the world who has a nice working script which is conveniently on GitHub, which has nowhere near enough stars, suggesting that not enough people know about this problem, or that everyone has support contracts, which I'm a little bit skeptical of.
Yeah. We did also find the guy who had pre-compiled an SSL version and was hosting his own SSL version of Mongo up there on the internet for anyone to download and use. Would you trust that binary? Probably not.
So that's interesting. And tool support is the other downside of this. So for a while, we were using a couple of tools for just giving you like easy UI, kind of play around with database, quick one-off queries, very good for like kind of BI, business analysts, CEO type people, which is great, except that because by default, you don't get a free SSL binary. When you try and connect several of these things, like the fantastically named Rock Mongo, to an SSL of Mongo, they just barf. And then you realize for a while that the SSL support in the PHP driver, which they were using, a little bit questionable, and it's the story gets very, very messy from then on inwards.
Yeah, very quickly.
I'm not going to cover all the kind of like data integrity concerns that people have. It's very well documented on the internet. It is possible to drop data. Yeah, make sure you read it all. It might happen to you. It's good to have some way of reconciling your data without trusting MongoDB. I think that's what we do.
That's what we've learned, yeah.
We have another way. The other thing is that the replica set situation where you have the same data on different machines is done in a kind of master-slave mode, which you know, standard election algorithms, perfectly sensible stuff, but it is possible for it to split brain, especially if you get these kind of one-off downtime, uptime, network connection breaks. And one of the things as well, which if you're doing cloud deployments, things do break, machines break, network connections break, very regularly, surprisingly regularly. Once a week, there will be some kind of hardware or network or something out there that horribly falls over, and you do need to be resilient to this.
Right, and initially we thought Mongo was really good for this, right? We saw it happen a bunch of times in the first few weeks we were prototyping and running with it, and, you know, the secondary would take over from the master that had dropped out, and everything was hunky-dory. Until about month number 3, when we had no masters. Everybody was secondary, and they're all pointing at each other going, he's the master, no, he's the master, no, he's the master, he's the master, and the whole thing just ground to a halt, and we couldn't write to our data store. Oh dear.
Thankfully, very quickly fixed. You also got into a situation where we had 2 masters as well.
Which is also really not good.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they fixed it.
Yeah. The other thing that's a bit nasty is MongoDB's a bit gnarly to sysadmin. It's a bit of a pain in the neck to get Chef to easily spin up a completely replica-setted MongoDB instance with all the security and pass. It gets a bit messy. You kind of need to not log in, but you need to automate a way of logging in and getting some of those things pushed together.
Yeah, I think that took John at least half an hour a day to cobble that together, and it really was cobbling stuff together with bits of shoestring and other nastiness. Yeah.
The other thing is, for a while, we had like a customer-facing website which was written in WordPress, was constantly using the PHP driver to connect to Mongo. Thankfully, someone we know very well, Zoe, knows the PHP driver, but, you know, we had at least 4 or 5 separate different bug fixes running on the PHP site for our live system to work. Bit worrying that you think other people are using tech, and then you get these really nasty bugs, and it suggests that they aren't really using it in anger or aren't really using it thoroughly, should we say. Document model limitations, again, quite well documented. It's nice, but not necessarily for everyone, and all the SQL and NoSQL solutions have their own niche, right?
Yeah, we'll probably have to tick along. I think we're beating up on Mongo.
Yeah, I was going to say as well, query language is really nice, but obviously it's another thing for people to learn.
Yeah, definitely.
So we actually gave it about a 5 out of 10, so it wasn't the end of the world, but, you know, I really would, if you're thinking about adopting it, I'd evaluate your security strategy quite well. Especially, I mean, if you're using something like EC2, you might be better off just VPCing everything and not worrying about security at the Mongo level. And the other thing to ask yourself, is a document store really what you want in terms of your data model? Because it might be, it might not be, and it might look like it is to begin with and then turn out not to be over time. So something to scenario plan.
So we asked people at Java 1 about, asked people at Java 1 about their MongoDB and whether they were aware of the security problem. And there must have been about 15 people in the room frantically scribbling down notes and getting on the phone and talking to their production teams, because they were basically crapping their customer data unsecured across the open internet. And you know, we know the security agencies are trying to grab everything anyway, but there's no need to make life easier for them. Really isn't. Right, so Mongo, 5 out of 10. Definitely not as good as Angular.
So Vert.x, Polyglot, Reactive programming framework. So in Vert.x, your kind of unit of deploying code's a vertical. You can pass messages between verticals using an event bus. Everything's asynchronous. Everything's non-blocking. They've got WebSocket support. It's kind of like a container, but it's a bit of a weird container in the sense you don't get annoying 5-second startup problems, or it's a very, very lightweight container, very easy to get going with.
Yeah, and you don't get Corba support by default or RMI support by default. It doesn't start up a transaction manager by default.
Yeah.
It's quite good.
And it's also very good from a concurrency point of view, because they really do enthusiastically push no shared mutable state. And they really do push messaging as a kind of basic paradigm, communication, as a fundamental.
Which is, I think, probably the only way to deal with complex concurrency today. It's just too difficult otherwise.
Yeah. Now, I also thought we were winning the slide with most buzzwords on at the conference.
I think we have, how many do we have there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, challenge to other speakers out there, you need to get more buzzwords than 6 on one of your slides. Yep. Start tomorrow.
So again, architecturally, it's kind of an example of how Vert.x might end up working. So you might well end up with a kind of more rich client browser side setup, using something like sock.js and the WebSocket support to talk to it. You can also talk to it using kind of traditional RESTful APIs. Your different verticals can be running different JVMs and happily clustered talking to each other via this event bus-based messaging system. And they can also be in totally different languages. And the default is to use a JSON-based protocol for messaging, but you're not restricted to that. It's very unopinionated.
And Tim, there's a diagram we promised you, so we'll send that to your wiki at some stage.
Okay, so positives. Again, the concurrency model is fantastic. If you kind of want to do actual code that does code and actual has concurrency to it, and that kind of model is fantastic. And the whole event bus to the browser setup works great for us. So we happily push messages over from our server-side components right through to our page app in people's browsers, send it back, entirely consistent messaging protocol, really easy to work with, and a bit of a security barrier in the middle to keep things nice and safe. But other than that, plop straight through.
Yeah, big win, especially with sock.js on the front end. It's been really good.
The community is fantastic. Very easy to get, put a pull request in. If it's reasonable, it'll get merged. Happy to discuss things on the mailing list. Fantastic stuff. And obviously, since more and more people in the JVM are not using Java or are diversifying in some sense, it being Polyglot's pretty good as well.
Hugely important for us, because I mean, vertx is all about messaging, so therefore you're talking a lot about having event handlers, callbacks, these kind of activities where you really want to have functional paradigms to write in your code, because if you don't, you end up having this sort of Java pyramid of doom as you nest callback handlers, callbacks, handlers, handlers, handlers all the way down. So for us just to be able to go, let's use Groovy or Scala or whatever else vertx supports today on some of our verticals was made for much, much cleaner code. It's really good.
On the downsides, there is still some kind of immaturity in the framework. So a kind of good example of this is when version 2 of Vert.x got released. They dropped support of 1.3, and there was like a 3 or 4 week gap in between the two where 1.3 wasn't supported, but 2 wasn't out, which was bad if you had a pending bug fix or patch. So hopefully that won't happen again in future, but that was a bit of an unfortunate situation in the past. And the other thing is the testing framework was also had a little bit of issues. Again, that's being improved. So I think hopefully both of those things are just problems which are going away, but you know, there were things that burnt us.
Yeah, so the example of the testing framework is that there's a really nice sort of JUnit runner style testing framework. So you can use most of the typical sort of JUnit things you'd expect. But some of the common annotations that you'd like to use in your testing scenarios don't quite work. So things like the before and after and ignore and stuff like that isn't quite there at the moment. But we don't anticipate that, you know, lasting much longer, that situation. So
yeah.
Good.
The framework also decided to go with its own logging stuff, which is a bit unfortunate. You can use your own logging as well, which is what we ended up doing. I think it's what most people end up doing, but a bit of a shame that's NIH'd. And we also had some issues with event bus security going between machines, which we've kind of worked around with a bunch of internal configuration and setting things up ourselves, but it's not perfectly secure out of the box. So that's
yeah, a bit of a common theme, which we'll talk about later, is definitely one of the areas that a lot of these open source new technologies, new bleeding edge technologies, always seem to sort of try and attach afterwards is security. And we ask any of you, if you are building the next great thing, please build in security and logging and internationalization in from the start. Thank you. I'll get off my soapbox now.
So we gave Vert.x 7 out of 10. And I think if it hadn't been for the immaturity issues, we'd be pushing even higher than that.
Definitely.
It's not perfect for everyone. There's a lot of apps which is just not quite the right model for, or where it's not quite the right model yet for, but it's certainly kind of going in the right direction, going good places.
Yeah, if you're thinking of using Node.js, please take a look at Vert.x. It is much more powerful and much more flexible and a lot safer to use as well. So highly recommend it.
And the other thing is Chef as well. So Chef will kind of automate server configuration. There's like a repo of pre-built recipes, and you use kind of an embedded DSL in Ruby to define your configuration, which can get updated and pulled onto individual machines. You can also do application deployment using Chef if you write your own recipes that kind of wrap up your application deployment story. And then you can pull them onto the machines by updating there.
Yeah, which is important for us when we're doing things like demos and we need to deploy the latest version of our application to, say, 10 AWS nodes. So me can go click on a button and show some customers some running stuff. So that's been really handy as well.
So Chef, good Java JVM recipes, quite a lot of things out there, and there's kind of a lot of, it's obvious that they've thought through a lot of the kind of configuration and the roles and the overriding story and all that kind of thing. And I think one of the things is just having the structure and deployment model for doing automated deployments is really good if you've ever been in a world where you started off with, let's write a shell script to automate this. Let's write another one. Let's write another one. And after a while, you end up in this hell.
You now have 4 problems, which are your 4 shell scripts. Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, the reason why we actually chose Chef over Puppet at the time, and we probably started 12 months ago, I think. It's probably about 12 months ago, was that fact that Puppet just didn't have strong support for Java and JVM-based things. So we didn't find it easy to quickly whip up an OpenJDK 7 sitting next to an OpenJDK 6 with a Tomcat server, blah, 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 whereas Chef just seemed to have that stuff out of the box. So I think the two are pretty equivalent. Maybe Puppet's caught up on the Java JVM side. I haven't taken a look, but it's primarily the reason why Chef won for us.
On the downsides, Chef has some very, very inconsistent commands. So it's got a concept of a recipe or cookbook, which is like a piece of configuration about a thing, so Apache or an application, a kind of a thing that you want to deploy out there. And it's got a role, so a role is like what your server's doing, like I know it's a report aggregator, it's a master database or something. And you can also get a data bag, which is a bundle of data. Now in all three cases, you've got a kind of local file or folder which you want to upload to Chef and say, hey, here's the thing, add it into your Chef master. If you want to do it for a recipe or a cookbook, the command is upload, and then you use the name of the recipe. If it's a role, you do the file, and you do the complete path, you say from file, followed by the complete path of the file. Then, even more confusingly, if it's a data bag, you say from file, but you don't give the complete path of the file, you give the one-off name of the file in a specific directory.
And the other cool thing about that last command is look how many special keywords you have to put into the command line. Knife, data, bag, from, file, users. Holy crap. This actually kind of made me rage quit our office one day. I was just stormed out of the office, and these two guys were left sitting behind wondering what I'd been so angry about. And it was me fighting with the Chef command line. I just pretty much had enough that day. Can be painful.
Times. Other negatives, managing dependencies can be a real pain in the neck. So it uses Git, which is kind of nice, but you end up tending to bring in other people's dependencies into your own Git repo and modifying them. There's a tool called Librarian, which does help with this. So if you're thinking about using Chef, try and use Librarian from day one, because migrating to it once you've already got 10,000 lines of Ruby code in a Git repo, not fun.
And you run across fun situations like, I'm installing the Java recipe. It is now downloading Windows. What? Wait, hang on a second here. Yeah, so we had a binary install of Windows sitting in our GitHub repo for a while.
Yeah.
God knows why.
The other thing is as well, it kind of, ideally these kind of things, you'd expect them to be declarative and also idempotent. And if everything's written perfectly, they can be, but the reality is they don't kind of end up being like that. So a good example of this is if you end up with config which you've added, and you remove that config, it doesn't necessarily get removed. There's a lot of perhaps tidy up, clean up things you need to be careful of.
Yeah, and it's actually incredibly dangerous. So we ran across a number of situations where we changed the root location of where we're installing Vert.x on all of our nodes in our cluster, just because we had discovered a better directory structure, basically. And for some reason, we were getting all sorts of strange behavior in production, and then we realized, oh crap, we've got two Vert.x's running because we'd left the old one behind, and we assumed that Chef had gone and cleaned that up when it hadn't. So it's definitely one to be very careful about.
And yeah, there is a big learning curve to these kind of things getting off the ground. So you still need to know a lot of existing sysadmin-y stuff as well as Chef particulars. So
yeah, I mean,
you need to know quite a lot.
We certainly, I mean, I personally still struggled with doing a lot of this type of DevOps work with Chef because I didn't have a strong background in Linux and things, right? So, trying to configure IP tables and other bits and pieces of networking and firewalling and things like that through Chef, it doesn't make it any easier if you don't have the underlying knowledge. So you don't assume that as a developer that you're just instantly going to pick up this tool and it will magically do things for you. You still need to have that level of understanding.
Yeah. So I think we were going to give Chef 7 out of 10, 3.5 gold stars. Again, if you've been into a situation where you started automating things through shell scripts or crazy manual stuff, it really is much, much better than that. It's a different world for doing kind of DevOps style, the new way.
There's still room for another technology to come out and beat the living daylights out of Puppet and Chef, though, I think.
Hopefully.
Yeah, we're hoping so.
Competition's good. So I guess we kind of talking about themes. So immaturity in general is kind of always a theme of this kind of stuff. Things which you would expect to just work, but annoyingly don't, or have that kind of grinding situation. Lack of tooling. So JavaScript especially is something which is a bit of annoyance.
And lots of problems with Eclipse plugins as well. And I know that's a bit of a running joke. But every time a new version of Groovy would come out, then the Eclipse plugin would come out 2 weeks later, but they wouldn't be compatible. and so on and so forth. So, quite a lot of times there was just random IDE rage because, some aspect of the tooling wasn't working.
A lot of problems at kind of the boundary between technologies where you probably expect with things which are a bit more mature that they've got a lot of people using things together. Not so much, and that's where you really start to hit issues. So I guess we're going to talk a bit about the brave new world.
The brave new world, yes.
Or maybe we're going to talk a little bit about relationships. Isn't that sweet?
Isn't that sweet? Can everyone say, ah? Ah. Oh, there we go. It's a nice, happy crowd. So what are relationships really like when you pick technology and how you go about picking technology?
Yeah, we're talking about relationships with technology.
Yeah.
It's kind of a bit more like this, isn't it?
Yeah.
You have your vendor on one side who's providing technology, and you on the other side who's providing dollars. And it's a nice, unfriendly exchange.
Yeah.
And it tends to be as ugly as the slide design we've used for this particular slide. Yeah.
And then the people below, they make it a little bit friendlier because they've sort of built up a community around a product or a technology. But what ends up really happening is that you still end up paying a support contract or paying dollars, and the technology still comes back to you pretty much in one-way traffic. So neither of these two, for us, was going to work.
And it brings up the question as well, what are you paying for with your support contract?
Well, when I was younger and I was starting out my career, I was working for one of the large consultancies, global consultancies, which I cannot name for legal reasons. But they would send us in 20 fresh-faced graduates with how to code Java in 24 hours under our arm and go into fix support problems for customers. And these customers were paying large 7-figure support contracts a year. And so what sort of quality and what sort of experience were they getting? They certainly weren't getting the people who wrote the core of the product. They were getting the 21, 22-year-old kids who were all bright-eyed and bushy-tabled but had no real-world experience. Not only that, they were still locked in with that product as well. The ability for you to be able to migrate off an existing vendor lock-in stack is just... I've run across cases where it's taken 5, 6, 7 years in an enterprise to move off a mainframe or to move off an old existing relational database system. It's just horrendous.
Mm-hmm. We're moving to what we perhaps call the a la carte open source model, which we've given a nice fancy name here. And as we say, it's really, really popular with startups who have absolutely no money like us.
Yes. Which you're all going to help us change, because after this you're all going to log into our website and buy us a product so we can go back to the traditional way of doing things and giving a vendor some money. Or maybe not. Possibly commercially funded tech. So Angular is a good example of this, where it's backed by Google, but they're not directly seeking a support contract type model of it. They just want it to just work. I think Vert.x, you could say, is reasonably strongly commercially supported by Red Hat, which is cool. Yeah.
And it's also a situation where you expect to have much stronger community support. So a lot of people out there beginning to use it, you're happy to talk to, you answer their questions, they answer yours. Mutually beneficial.
Very much so.
And I think one of the points about the kind of a la carte relationship, as opposed to the traditional technology vendor relationship, is you need to be part of those tech communities. So we participated in the Vert.x IRC meetup, sent patches upstream, have a chat with some people in a pub in London who are using it, that kind of participation. If you've got patches on things, improvements, fixes, you want to upstream them. So we've pushed patches upstream on Vert.x, on Vert.x's Mongo integration, on Jacoco as well, which is horrific. And the other thing is open sourcing your internal tooling, so giving back to people. So
anything that's not your core IP or your core competency, if it's sort of plumbing code, definitely think about open sourcing it and giving it back out to the community. And in terms of spending time on this kind of a la carte model, we allow our team probably roughly, say, 15, 20% time. It's nothing official, but there's always plenty of time given to allow us to put patches back upstream. So it is something time-wise that you do have to factor into your development model, but it's still faster and it's still less time and resources than trying to deal with a vendor lock-in with closed source code that you just simply can't fix, and you might get a support person in 3 months' time that can fix it for you.
So, how do people do this if they're not running their own startup, Martijn?
So the way I used to do this in my large enterprises that I worked at, so several banks, etc., I'll try and use new technologies on very low-risk projects. So typically some sort of back-end administration CRUD screen for a front-end customer-facing application. That's always a great one to use. If you're lucky enough to get 20% time, which most of us sadly don't, then that again is a great way of trying out a new technology. Number one rule is point 2 on the slide there. Never, ever, ever ask for permission. Lawyers will say no. Your boss will say no. Compliance will say no. Human resources will say no. The janitor will say no. Because it's the instinct of any human being who's in a position of responsibility, when they get asked something, they're like risk averse, right? So just say no. And the last point is, when you do get pushback from your organization or from your teams, and they say, oh, they wouldn't like that. Who's they? Go find out who they are or who them are, get a name, get on the phone, and ask them, why am I not allowed to do this? And more often than not, you'll actually get the real reason, and then you can work through that roadblock.
So I guess one of the things about DevOps this year is their theme is rebirth. I think one of the things we were thinking about was it's also quite a good opportunity for Java, the community, moving forward to have a bit of a technology rebirth, a bit of a use different things, don't necessarily get stuck into the Java EE model, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Don't just grab the Spring Hibernate XML toolbox every single time is what we're saying. Really think about what the requirements, what the technology requirements are for your particular application. So for us, we were a cloud-based SaaS service. We just simply couldn't go for a lot of the Java EE technologies. And yeah, as Dick Wall said, I think last year or the year before, be brave. Just go out there, be fearsome, try these new technologies, and you will be pleasantly surprised with how well it does actually pay off. Especially if you follow the a la carte model and you contribute back to those open source communities that are providing you the technology, then you're on to a winner.
Yep, it's been working out well for us.
Definitely.
So I guess we're going to move on to the Q&A. Anyone got any questions?
In the front there.
Did you consider using Ansible for deployment or Akka for your backend?
So did we consider using Ansible for our deployment or Akka for our backend? Ansible, no. Didn't consider it at all, so happy to take a look. Akka, yeah, so when we did our sort of technology spreadsheet in terms of picking what we were going to use for our messaging bus and things like that, Akka was one of the choices. Fell slightly short for a variety of reasons. I can't remember all of them.
I can't remember entirely off the top of my head, but I think it was more because Vert.x was very much more strongly event bus message driven, whereas Akka's more send a message to a thing, directly have an actor reference. I appreciate there are event streams, you can look into that kind of stuff, but I think it felt more natural in Vert.x. I think that was part of it.
Yeah, and also sort of Akka and Java itself aren't that strong as a combination. Akka Scala, fantastic, but we at that time had much stronger Java expertise in our team than we had Scala expertise, so yeah, that was the other reason. Any other questions out there? If I can see through the bright lights. No? Yes? One over there? Yeah, one in the front? Yep. What alternatives did we discuss? Did we try against MongoDB, and why did they fail? So we had a look at Cassandra, Riak, Postgres.
I think a bunch of the NoSQL solutions got killed in the voting stage because they didn't have as much documentation, community traction, that kind of stuff as Mongo did. And the thing that they were specifically good at, like I know for Cassandra, for example, it's really, really strong write performance. We weren't things that we necessarily needed. And then when we kind of prototyped, I think it came down to Postgres and Mongo. And I think a couple of us in the team before had worked in a situation so we had clustered Postgres and didn't necessarily trust that setup. And we had configuration issues, things like that beforehand. So I think that was how it worked out.
Yeah.
Was another question?
Gentleman's fine, yep. Are we using Chef Solo versus Chef Server? We are definitely using a Chef Server.
Yeah.
Yep, to control of our configuration. So we have the Chef Server, we have the clients on all the machines that we deploy to, and yeah, it's just a typical Chef client update. Yes? Yeah, it's the dependencies with cookbooks that we struggled with initially, and it's probably more of our lack of understanding of Chef early on than maybe a fundamental. So it's still probably a fundamental issue with Chef. If there is something, what did you mention, Chef or something? Bookshelf. Okay, so that's something bookshelf.
Oh.
Okay, great. Right, I'm going to grab you a beer afterwards and I'm going to get that detail off you. Fantastic. I knew we should have done this talk. Brilliant. Any other questions out there? Oh, yeah, one at the back. Oh, sorry, in the middle, sorry.
Sorry?
Oh, what's special about our Maven release plugin?
Runs your tests once and not 4 times, thus saving a significant amount of time. Yeah.
And
it's good, it's good.
And it actually rolls back properly.
Oh, yeah. Actually, transactional rollback, which
works.
does not work at all.
So we have open sourced it. If you get hold of us through our website there.
There we go.
There's a link there.
Link at the bottom.
Yeah. And you can harass our other engineer, John, about it, because he really hates any sort of public recognition. He's on Twitter, and he follows Steve Ballmer and has about 3 followers back. It's brilliant. So go find him and harass him. He'll love it.
Yeah.
Any other questions out there? If I can see through the lights. 2 at the front here. We'll go with the one on the left.
So are you now considering replacing Mongo with something else or not?
Yes, we are. We're going to go through and do another tech evaluation probably in the December timeframe and see how things stack up. Yeah. I'm personally quite interested in Reactive because Reactive have just recently put out their solution, which is master-master based. And they've put a Lucene/Solar index on top of it. So they've kind of got this strange bunch of Erlang nodes which all talk to each other master-master, then they've gone and put this Apache Solar thing on top. So in theory, you can do free-form text searches on top of your distributed NoSQL solution. Fingers crossed.
Why not use Elasticsearch?
I mean, we haven't picked anything. I'm sure a lot of these kind of things will just get thrown through the mix when we do a technology evaluation. I mean, we'll follow the same methodology again.
That'll definitely be one we add to the list, though, for sure.
Yeah.
Question there?
It's already on the slide.
Oh, right, yes, the release plugin. We should have just done a talk on the release plugin.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. Any more questions? We've got time for one more, I think. Pointing to that way. Thank you. Hello. Could we elaborate on the machine learning part? I think we can do that a little bit. I'll let you cover that. I'm not machine learning pro at all. My machine learning skills are about there.
So, in some vague detail, are you asking from a technology point of view, or are you asking what are we doing with machine learning? What are we doing with machine learning? So the point about our main product, jClarity, is it tries to identify the underlying bottleneck of an application. So not just like, here's a profile, here's what it's doing. You want to know whether, to make it go faster, should you be tuning garbage collection, disk performance, network performance? Are you calling an external web service that's really slow? Those kind of different factors. And so we've been using machine learning to understand the relationship between available metric data and profiling information and what the underlying root cause and bottleneck of an application's performance problems are.
Yeah, so a bunch of us used to be human consultants in the performance tuning space, and we kind of figured out the way that we solve problems heuristically could probably be turned into software, but it's not a simple decision tree at all, and it really did take the work that these guys have done with some machine learning algorithms to kind of think about all the strange variables that actually make up a performance bottleneck. And it's still learning, and we're still learning and being surprised almost every day. It's good fun. Cool. All right, we'll leave it at that. Run off and get your fries and beer. I'm afraid the queues will be quite long at this stage, but thank you for sticking around, and have a good rest of the conference.
Thank you very much.